You're listening to the GRCC Provost podcast.
Let's see how I do, Gilles. Bienvenue, persons of quality. We've been on hiatus for a while, but now we're back with a very special episode, a faculty profile with Chef Gilles Renusson of our Culinary Arts Institute. And he's agreed to come today and chat with me about a number of things. His career in the culinary arts, teaching. We're going to talk food culture. It's going to be awesome. What's the French word for awesome, Gilles?
I would say fantastique.
Fantastique. Merveilleux.
Merveilleux, that's
Merveilleux. All right. So.
Or actually, you could just say super.
Super. You know, Gilles, that I love France, and I've traveled there on a number of occasions. And you know that I'm a fan of French pastry. I believe I've revealed that. So I want to sort of start out with a food culture question. I mean, France is widely known as a culinary destination, a culinary capital of the world. French cuisine, highly regarded. Why do you think that is? What is it about French history, French culture that makes that so?
Well, I think it's a living, it's a style. It's a lifestyle of French people, which is to take the time to enjoy a meal. People are taught from their parents or at school, even in just high school, how to cook. A little bit less now than it used to be. Parents and grandparents expect simple, tasty, fresh food. It does not need to be a big proportion. It does not need to be something you're going to keep in the cooler for a few days. Traditionally, we go buy bread 2-3 times a day. I remember as a child, Dad would wake us up and say, who wants to go get the bread? So we would get bread for breakfast before we go to school. Luckily, we live right across the school, so that wasn't too difficult. And then after school, at noon, when you would have your break, you would go get your bread also, straight out of the oven. And then in the evening, you go get the bread again. So it's changing a little bit, obviously, because people are putting more pressure on themselves. But there are still many opportunities for you to enjoy food everywhere, at home, in the small restaurants. But it is also changing a little bit, though. Some fast food, some convenient food is inching its way through society, and I hope it does not dilute too much the tradition, and it allows people to still enjoy food and know good food and share good food, and everybody does it, so it's something you do really quick, you know. It's not an effort to cook.
Because you grow up learning.
Because you grew up learning. You grew up in the kitchen. You grew up helping mom peeling the potatoes. I remember one of my brothers, I have a large family. I have 7 brothers and sisters. And I remember one of them went to school and he didn't do his homework. So the teacher said, why didn't you do your homework? Say, because I peeled 50 potatoes. They were tiny little ones. You know, they may not have 50 potatoes. So everybody gets involved in cooking, you know. Mm-hmm.
What do you think led you to become a chef?
That's a good question. It was an interesting scenario. So my dad was a policeman, so we grew up in a small village, and the police station, there were 9 families, so it was a little bit of a compound of a large building where all the family lived, with a large yard and a garage and gardens, and right next to it was a huge forest. So I spent a lot of time in the forest and not enough time at school, not enough time doing my homework, should I say. I was going to school, but not always doing my homework as well as I should. So one day I was 14 years old, and I brought the report card to Mom, and Mom wasn't too happy with it. And she said, well, wait until after dinner and you'll show Dad, because otherwise it's not going to be a very pleasant dinner. I waited until after dinner, and then Mom said, I think you have something to show Dad. I said, oh yeah. I will never forget, I know exactly where every one of my brothers and sisters were seated and where Mom and Dad were standing. Dad was on my right at the end of the table, and Mom moved and she stood right in front of me on the other side of the table. Dad said, well, if you don't do any better than this next year, you're going to boarding school. And so I thought, well, it's okay, I still have a bit of time. And then Mom said, so which boarding school do you want to go to? She wasn't going to be waiting. That's it. You have had your chance, you have abused them, and now you're going to boarding school. And so I say, where do you want to go? And that's how it happened. Overnight, like this, instant. Say, what do you want to do? And I had 2 or 3 ideas, but I said, I'd like to cook. And my dad said, good idea, you'll never be hungry. And so that's when I started my apprenticeship. I was 14 years old, and I was lucky that there was a spot open in a school about an hour and a half, a bit more than an hour away. I was there during the week, and I would come back and spend less than 24 hours per weekend at home, and that's how it started. And then all of a sudden I could focus because I didn't have all this distraction of the forest and the bodies around, and that's it. You're in the boarding school, you're going to study. And it was a good school, and I'm glad I did, because it definitely molded my career in many ways.
Did you take to the tasks and the cooking immediately, or did it take some time?
Oh no, immediately. I had good teachers, and I was surrounded by other young boys who had the same dreams. So no, it came. It was love at first sight. It was not easy. I mean, we had to memorize, and never forget this. We had to memorize this book like this. It was about an inch thick, and it was full of recipes, and you had to know all the recipes by heart. By heart, all the ingredients by heart. And every week you would be quizzed on this, and it was stressful. You had to learn every single one by heart, no question asked. And then and every week you would be quizzed on this. So and it was valuable because very quickly you understand the percentages of the ingredient, you understand the functionality of the ingredients, and it was an excellent training. But my first training wasn't in pastry; it was in cooking. And so I did that for 3 years, and then I asked to stay for an extra year to also learn dining room. And my instructor said, "Why you won't do that? You don't want to be wasting 1 year in the dining room." And after I spent that year in the dining room, I felt that I did waste a bit of a year because I could have been doing something else. But then, in retrospect, you don't have to regret it, because otherwise I wouldn't be here to talk to you about it. The circumstance would have been different.
Tell me a little bit about your career path. Once you finished this time at boarding school.
Yes.
What were some of your stops along the way? And finally, how did you end up here at the Sequia Institute for Culinary Education?
So my first job out of school was in Belgium. I went to work in Liège, in the French-speaking part of Belgium. Belgium has 3 parts, Dutch, French, German-speaking. So I was in the...
Wallonia, right?
Sorry?
Is it Wallonia?
Exactly, Wallonie.
Okay,
yes, Wallonie.
Wallonie.
Wow.
I'm trying to impress
English
you, Gilles.
teacher and sorry, fantastic. So I was there for a bit less than a year. It was my first experience out of school. After a bit less than a year, I left. I thought, okay, I've seen what I need to see, and I need to move on. And I knew that within a year I had to go to the military service, because at the time it was mandatory. I went back to school to see my teachers, to say hi to them. And they say, "Oh, it's so nice to see you. What are you up to?" I say, "Well, I'm going to go for my test, because you have to go to get tests to do your military service. And then after that, I'll probably go pretty quick." They said, "So you're free now?" I said, "Yes." They said, "Okay. Jacques Sylvestre is looking for the best student of every school to go work with him." Jacques Sylvestre is the gentleman who wrote the book for the apprentices. There was one book, all the apprentices in the country had the same book. I had a very good relationship with my teachers, the professors, and they say, "Well, we would like you to go. It's this summer, so delay your military service until the end of summer, and then go on." So I said, "All right." I listened to them, obviously, because they were like fathers for me. So I went to work with Jacques Sylvestre in the city of Contrexéville in the Vosges region on the east side. I was there for about 4 months. When I worked with him, the sous chef told me, "When you're done with your military service, give me a call. I'll introduce you to some people in Paris, and we'll find you a job." So I did my 1 year as a paratrooper in France, because I said, well, if I have to go do my military service, I'm going to do something different. So I volunteered there. And then when I finished, just before I finished, I called the sous chef, and he said, "Okay, come to Paris in 2 weeks." So I did. So I went there. I was a shy guy. I went there, the big place, and introduced me to the president of the association. He said, so where were you before? I said, well, I went to work with Mr. Jacques Sylvestre. Oh, you work with Mr. Jacques Sylvestre? All right, I have a job for you. You're going to go work with Mr. Villamot at Maxim's at the airport. I worked in the kitchen for a bit more than a year. I didn't like the kitchen. I liked the pastry better. The pastry chef was a cool gentleman. He was really nice guy. And I was poor as a church mice, so I would just spend my day at work. I spent a lot of time in the pastry shop. And then one day the pastry chef told me, hey, there is a job. I have a job for you in the pastry shop. So I went to work in the pastry shop. And then after 6 months, he said, okay, I've taught you everything I can teach you here because it's a restaurant. That's all you're going to see. You need to move on. Oh, my goodness, I was shocked. So now all of a sudden I have to go look for a job. So I felt really insecure. I thought, oh my God, I'm in this big city. I don't know very many people and I have to go look for another job. He said, don't worry, I'll go with you. He said, so we'll go to Paris and I introduce you to some people. So we went to Paris and then we walked in front of Fauchon, which is, according to the Guinness Book of Records, the most expensive food store in the world. So I walked there and I said, that's where I want to work. And he said, I don't know anybody there. He said, so you go see the chef and you go ask if he has a job for you. So I go in and I ask the chef, the chef, and the chef comes in. Yes, young man. Well, I'd like to know if I could work here. And he said, where are you working now? And I said, I'm working at Maxim's at the airport. Oh, you're working with Mr. Villamot? I said, yes, chef. Okay, call me back in 2 weeks. I called him and he said, yeah, I have a job for you. Okay. And what does he pay? He said, pays 1,500. So I was taking a cut. Okay, I call you back. I was mad. I said, my goodness, I'm already 22 years old. I've been in this business since the age of 14. I deserve a little bit more than this, but I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I didn't say anything. So I went to see the chef, my pastry chef, Alain Tricot, and I said, well, they have a job for me, but it's only 1,500 francs. He said, hey, you're the one who asked for the job. Take what they give you. It's going to be the best chance for you. And it was. But I did it, and it was the best investment I ever did. So I was there for a bit less than 2 years, and then I left. I wanted to leave, and then I went to see Mr. Tricot at Maxim's, and I said, I want to leave, and I'd like to go work in England. He said, okay, give me 2 minutes. I went to visit him in his own house, and he gave me a letter. 2 minutes later, he went in his kitchen, wrote a letter, gave me a letter, and said, you go in London, and you go see Michel Bourdin at the Connaught Hotel, and you give him this letter. The letter was sealed. To that day, I have no idea what was written on the letter. So I said, all right. So I arrived there at 6 o'clock in the morning. I asked the doorman, could I speak to Mr. Bourdin? He said, do you have an appointment? I said, no. He said, all right, come with me. And I met Mr. Bourdin in his kitchen. He was alone. He was doing his ordering. He said, well, come in my office. So I go in his office, small office, pictures of him with the Queen Mother, pictures of him with Queen Elizabeth and his family. So, here I am in the big league here. So I said, well, I have a letter for you from Mr. Tricot. So he sat down, he read the letter, he said, welcome on board. He said, I have 50 cooks, but for 2 weeks we're going to be 51 because I know I have one who is leaving. Welcome on board. He said, but I need a commitment for you for a year. And I said, no problem, because I already know what I want to do in a year from now. I already knew I wanted to go to the Master Craftsman School for pastry. I'd already planned that. But these were great experience because there were 50 cooks, out of which maybe a dozen were French, and all of whom had the same aspiration, which was master English in the UK and then go export your skills. And that's what happened after. Yeah. So that's where I met my wife in England, and then we moved to Paris. Worked at the Dalloyau, which was a competitor to Fauchon, through the recommendation of former sous chef of Fauchon. I worked there for about 2 years, and then I wanted to come to the US. So I got married in France, wanted to come to the US. So I went to see my boss at the Connaught, Mr. Bourdin, because he had told me he knew that I met Eva, who is American, and he said, when you want to go to America, you give me a call. So I went to visit him, and I said, I want to go to America. He said, all right, if you want to go to America, there are only 3 options. You go work in a school, you go work in a hotel, or you go work in a country club, because there are no retail pastry shop of the caliber of what you've seen. So you see, you shouldn't have asked this question because you see how long the answer is.
I would say I have never found a retail pastry shop in America that matched what I've seen in France.
But there are a few now. There are a few. Yes.
Well, you'll have to tell me later where they are.
Las Vegas area, Bellagio in Las Vegas, Financier in Paris, in New York. There are a few good ones. So I went to see Mr. Bourdin at the Connaught, and I told him, well, I want to go to the U.S. He said, well, I have a very good friend. His name is Mr. Gilles, and he's the president of Johnson West University in Rhode Island, which at the time was the biggest culinary school in the world. And I'm going to send him a message, and when you get there, give them a call. So a few months later, I was leaving to the U.S. I arrived in March of '81, and a few days after I arrived, I called and said, oh yeah, we were expecting your phone call. Come and visit us. So I went to visit them. And they gave me the job right away. So I was there for a bit less than a year because the program was very different from ours. Every instructor highly specialized, and at the time we would teach the same subject for 6 days, and every 6 days you have a new student. So it was not so fascinating, not as much, far less interesting than what I teach here. And it was very structured. Then one of the instructor, Bruno von Lubowieski, I never forget his name, a super classy gentleman from Austria, say, hey, there is a job open at the Ritz in Chicago. And I know the director of the club at the Ritz, and just go ahead and give them a call. And they like my resume, say, okay, well, come and visit. When can you come and visit? Say, I'm not coming and visit unless you send me a plane ticket. And they say, well, it's not company policy. I said, then thank you very much, goodbye. And the next day they call me and say, okay, we want to send you a plane ticket to come and visit us. So I went, I saw what I had to see, and I said, all right, I take the job. So I was there a bit less than 2 years, and it was tough. I mean, the Ritz Chicago was a tough place. A 2 pastry shop on the 12th story, and the freezer were in the basement, and high quality. High quality, high pressure, and that was my first job in charge. I mean, I was executive pastry chef there. It was a tough, but I had a great chef, Edouard Mera, who was a really good man and who trusted me and who helped me in many ways. And I was there for a bit less than 2 years, and then Edouard Mera left, and then somebody else came in, and the first day the new chef came in, I thought, I'm not going to get along with him. I could see him, he's not the same class as Edouard Mera. And so this new chef came in, and about 3 months later, I was called for a position at the Emigran. So I liked the idea because Eva is from Lansing, So I said, okay, but Grand Rapids is not on the map, I didn't know. so I said,
is now.
Now it is. We put it on the map. And so I came and I saw this place, the Emigran. I said, wow, such high standards, such fantastic bakery operation. I say, right away, sign. And I was at the Emigran for 8 years. So I had already competed in France successfully, but then, so that led me to competing and competing in Germany with Mr. Gallo, who used to be the director of the culinary program, but who was also my neighbor. We were neighbors for 7 years, Bob Gallo and I. So we were the typical neighbor, that are mowed their lawn, each one, and then all of a sudden they get close to the fence, they stop the mower and they chat. That was us, So Bob and I were friends, and I knew the faculty too because I had done quite a few seminars. And then when the position was open for a pastry chef at the college, he said, I would like you to apply. And so I dragged my feet a little, and because I was thinking I wanted to leave the Emigran, I'd been here long enough, and I was thinking, okay, let's go somewhere else. And then with my wife, we thought about it. We said, hey, let's be serious. We're in Grand Rapids. The job is in Grand Rapids. Why move? And that was 25 years ago. So I've lived in Grand Rapids longer than anywhere in my life, even more than in France. Yeah. You done?
No, I think there are some really important lessons for students in your career path and how you approach things. And I would say I learned similar lessons following an academic path, obviously very different career. So I'm sort of sitting here taking notes. I mean, the idea that it's great to spend 25 years at a place, it's nice to spend a career at a place, but often if you want to progress in your profession, you need to move out. Essentially, you need to get a lot of different experiences, and the next step up or the next challenge may not be at the place you are. And I'm sort of picturing, as you're explaining your career to me, you're sort of marching across, the Western Hemisphere, and he's gone from France to London to Rhode Island to Chicago to Grand Rapids.
Yes.
And I think that's sometimes it's a hard lesson, but you really seem to have embraced that notion that if I want to progress, I need to move.
And that's what I tell my students. I stress to them the importance of networking, because if it hadn't been for the people with whom I kept in touch, with my teachers, just starting out of the teachers who sent me to Sylvestre, to the sous chef from Sylvestre who sent me to Paris, to the chef at Maxim, the pastry chef at Maxim who helped me to find the job in London, to Mr. Bourdin who helped me find the job in the US, and then after that I was on my own, and even to Otto von Lubowieski who told me, hey, there is this job at the Ritz. The value of networking is enormous. Today, I think it's looked at slightly differently because access to information is so much easier with the internet. I preach to my students the importance of building relationship and maintaining this relationship. And you don't maintain a relationship just by always asking. You have to make the first step and you have to keep in touch. And I teach them something that may not be so good, but I still do. I did it yesterday. Like I say, look, we're in a pastry shop. We're surrounded with goodies. We have a tool that makes friends. Everybody loves pastries. Everybody loves candies. At the Amway Grand, the pastry shop was 15 yards away from the engineering. And every day you produce a little bit more because you don't know if the numbers are going to go up. So you always have a little bit of leftover, and we would sell them for a dime on the dollar, to the staff. Or I would take some of them and I would go to the engineering and say, you want some of these? Follow me. So build relationship, and without putting in peril the financial situation of your business. Mm-hmm. And today I do the same. I need something a little bit special and I need it in a crush. Take a few goodies. I go see the computer lab. I go see I go see people around campus, and they all appreciate it. And then they remember. They remember more than just the service. Now you start to create a relationship, and the networking to me is huge because I've been a huge beneficiary of networking. I've given, but I've also received a lot.
It strikes me that another important lesson of your story is the hard work involved and the years you put in. I mean, I hear your story and I think Gilles has paid his dues. Working long hours for little money. And again, I think sometimes younger people or people at the beginning of their career sort of see things differently. They expect progression quickly.
Yes.
They sort of expect, recognize my greatness now instead of, the philosophy of pay your dues. I really like the philosophy of pay your dues. I believe in it.
It's an interesting philosophy. Last year, I was having a downtime. At one time, I was a bit depressed. I was thinking, what are we doing? We're training young people to go in a profession that pays peanuts. In the beginning in this profession, you really pay your dues. Compared to that, you have students that choose a different career path, maybe because they were brighter at school, which would have been my case because I had to make a choice, Sometimes I say, wow, this is a tough profession. But I say, well, I made it. I mean, I got out of it. I got out of poverty. I can tell you what's the cheapest thing you can eat in France, huh? It's bread and apricot jam. Apricot jam is the cheapest of all the jams, right?
But that is the most wonderful thing. Bread in France and apricot jam.
Yeah, but when you eat that for a year, after a while, you get to be...
It sounds good to me.
Yeah, so... No, but that's why I say, so there is a way forward in this profession. You have to believe in yourself. I tell my students, don't come to me on graduation day and tell me, look at the car my mom and dad gave me. I said, this is the wrong approach. When you get out of school, you must invest in yourself. Go learn, learn how to live with little things, because as long as you feed your brain, you're building some asset. And these assets you will bank on them someday, and I've been richly rewarded.
You obviously had talent early on that people recognized, your teachers recognized, but you also had to put in a lot of hard work. Do you feel like it took you that long? It took you as long to become a great teacher as it took you to become a great chef? Was that learning curve similar?
I think it took me longer to be a good teacher than to be a good chef. But I wasn't any special chef for students. It's just I worked hard. Just like there were guys that were brighter than me by a long shot, but they may not have the right attitude. We tell that to our students. You can be the smartest student in the group. If you don't have the right attitude, and I'm coming to interview and I'm looking for an employer, I'm going to go for the person that want to go the extra mile. So it was not given by any means. It was earned with many effort and a lot of sacrifice.
What goals are left for you in your career?
Wow.
Is there anything you aspire to that you haven't done?
I have friends that have bucket list. I've never had a bucket list. I'm way too busy to have time to reflect on what's next.
You alluded to competitions,
Yes.
and that your mentors encouraged you to enter competitions, and I know that we have a lot of competitions that we have our students become involved in. What is the value of that?
As you compete, as a young person, it's to discover some new skills. It's to gain a certain discipline. If you commit to doing something in a competition, the eyes of the people in the room are on you. And when I teach the competition seminar, which I've taught all over the world, from Russia to South Africa to Hong Kong to all over, I always tell, when you compete, your next employer may be in the room. If you compete, you learn how to surpass yourself. You are going to have a lot of sleepless nights. Many. You're going to go to the barber just a few hours before the award ceremony. After you finish, you're going to fall asleep in the chair of the barber. That happened to me. So you are going to meet some fascinating people. You really develop some skills, some discipline, some quality, which are recognized among our peers.
Mm-hmm. I think I told you the last time my husband and I were in Paris, which is a city I love, I said we have to go to Fauchon.
Absolutely, because you have reason.
Because my colleague Gilles worked there, and we did, and it was so much fun. And I think I can confirm, at least from experience, that it probably is the most expensive food store in the world. We had a delightful time. We each had a pastry and a cup of tea.
And it cost you a fortune.
50 euros for just mine and 50 for his. And sort of, since I'm used to dollars, euros sort of seem like play money to me.
Yeah, even though they're more expensive.
Even though they are. Yeah. And honestly, we had a wonderful time, and it was great. I know these are hard to make, but it was a simple millefeuille.
Yes.
Gilles, I usually ask everybody this final question. What do you wish I had asked you? What should I have asked you that I didn't?
No, maybe it's my turn to ask you some questions.
I got nothing.
No, I think I open up pretty much. No, I think you asked. No, you. I feel that I spoke an awful lot, and I should probably have given you more opportunity to ask.
No, these are not about me. Remember, faculty profile. Well, I hope you know how proud the college is of the Culinary Arts Department and the SICE program. And it's always delightful to speak with you. And I appreciate your comment on the podcast. And you're the big grand kickoff, the re-kickoff. Is that a word?
Rejuvenation.
The rejuvenation, the comeback. I don't know.
Let's use some sophisticated English word because you master the English language so well, don't you?
It's hard for me to be sophisticated, Gilles, particularly on request. I might have spontaneous moments of sophistication, but they're few and far between.
I remember some meetings where you enlightened us or introduced us to some new term, and I had to. I knew some of them because they had similarity with French. Some were almost the same. I said, "Wow, I haven't heard this very often in the U.S." So,
again, thank you very much. I know it's been a while since we've had a podcast, but I want my listeners to remember and please rest assured that you remain the highly esteemed, much appreciated faculty and staff of a very happy provost. Boom.
Thank you, Laurie.
Or should I say le boom?
Well, depending how you feel, it could be la boum too.
I don't know.
La boum, which means the party in French. Oh, yeah. La boum, yeah. We are going to have. Nous allons avoir une boum à la maison. You know, young kids would say.
Oh, that's.
Où allons-nous faire la boum? Where are we going to do the boom? And the boom is a party.
Faire la boum.
Faire la boum. Yeah.
I love it. I've learned new French. It's awesome.
So you can add boombox. So you see what you can connect to the word boom. You know? When you are going to have a quiz in the near future or puzzle, boom, boom, boom box, la boom.
So.
Thanks, Laurie.
Je ferai le boom ce soir.
Yes.
Woohoo!
You see, look at that.
I can remember a little.
You've been listening to the GRCC Provost Podcast, produced by GRCC Media Technologies. Join us next episode for more Provost.